When I signed up for driver's ed, I definitely didn't expect that I would find myself in the situation where I thought that my driver's ed teacher was trying to kidnap me. So this happened a few years ago when I was about 16, and I signed up for this driver's ed class that taught you how to drive and then gave you your license at the end. And the way it worked was it was divided into two separate parts. The first part was just sitting and learning in the classroom, and then the second part, on another day, you would get in a car with one of their instructors and practice for the driving test. And I was pretty excited to start the driving section, but first I had to go through the classroom part. And it was mainly just them throwing out a bunch of statistics to scare us into driving extremely cautious. They say stuff like, yeah, actually, little known fact, every time you get inside a car, you're actually just guaranteed to die. And then at the end of the class, they explain that the next step is that one of their professional instructors will be driving around with us, basically teaching us how to drive. And the way I'm expecting this to go is I hop in the driver's seat, drive around the city with some instruction from the teacher, and then drive back. Just like anybody would expect any normal driving lessons to go. And it didn't really go quite like that, but it did start out like that. It started out completely normal. So the day of the first lesson, I get in the car with this dude and he introduces himself. He's like, my name is Mike. I'm like, all right, Mike, let's do this. Now, at first, I wouldn't say red flag, but it made me be like, bro, are you sure about this? Is he asked me how much driving experience I had before today, and I'm like, oh, not really much at all. I've driven maybe a couple times before, and that's it. And I'm still not really used to driving on the regular roads. He's like, okay, have you ever gone on the freeway? I'm like, never. And then like 5 minutes later, he's like, oh look, here's a freeway, quick, turn right. This is the perfect time for you to get some freeway experience. And I'm like, bro, I barely even have any experience on, the regular roads. Like, are you trying to die right now or what? I just want to get used to the side streets first, especially because where I live, it'll say speed limit 65. And then everybody acts like it's NASCAR. It'll be flying down the road at like 90 miles an hour. I'm not gonna lie, it was slightly intimidating for this early on in my driving career, but it ended up being cool. It's not like we got T-boned or anything. So we exit the freeway, and as we're driving along, the next thing I notice about this man is he did not stop talking. He talked about everything, like the most random topics, food, sports. I learned like the entire history of his family. So there was his one son who went to Minnesota for college, and then his other daughters moved to San Diego, but then his one daughter was moving back to Arizona because of her boyfriend, but then they broke up, so now she doesn't know what to do. I don't know, the lore on Mike's family goes pretty deep, alright? But my first impression of him was he was a pretty cool guy. He just liked to talk a lot, which me at the time, I had barely ever driven a car before. It was a bit stressful. I'm trying to keep my focus on the road, and he's rambling on about how he burnt the enchiladas that he tried to make last night for dinner. And that was another big topic, food. This man absolutely loved cooking, and that'll be important later. And then in addition to all his rambling, he was also really against any car nicer than like a Civic. So a Corvette or something would drive by and he'd be like, yeah, you see that? That's a horrible investment right there. Whatever you do, never buy one of those cars. So between stories about his family and rambling on about random topics and roasting whoever drove by in a sports car, it was kind of a lot going on. So I'm at the point of just trying to tune him out. And we're like 30 minutes into the lesson at this point when he goes, oh, I forgot to ask you earlier, would you mind if we stopped by my house halfway through the lesson? I need to flip my meat. And I'm like, you wanna elaborate on what you mean by that? And he continues, he's like, yeah, I left some steak cooking back in my house. It's been in there the entire day. And he's like, I gotta flip it over so the other side can cook. And then he's like, it'll just be really quick. There's nothing for you to worry about. Now, I'm pretty sure that in the classroom when they were explaining how the driving lessons would work, it did not include a stop off at the instructor's house halfway through to do some quick cooking. But one part of me was like, he has been talking a lot about cooking this entire car ride. He seemed like he was pretty into food, so maybe it wasn't that out of the ordinary for him to interrupt his driving lessons to do some quick cooking. But then the other part of me was like, nah, the only reason he was talking about cooking this whole time was to normalize me to the idea that he liked cooking, so I wouldn't even think much of it when we went to his house to check his steak, on some psychology mind trickery type of thing. But then when we actually pull up, he's just gonna tie me up and like hold me hostage in his basement or something. And the way he asked if it would be okay if we stopped by his house, he phrased it like a question, but his tone didn't make it sound like I had an option. It was kind of demanding, like we were gonna go regardless of what I said. That's how he was coming across. Like his steaks were currently the top priority. He was gonna get to his house one way or another. That was the whole vibe I was kind of getting from him. So I'm like, okay, that should probably be fine. I guess we can stop off at your house so you can flip your steaks. And he's like, cool, it's a bit of a drive away, so let's start driving now. This will be good practice for you anyways. So he starts telling me all these directions, turn left here, then turn right again. And at this point, we had driven to some part I'd never really been to before. So this is foreign territory to me. I'm just driving wherever he tells me to go. And I'm not gonna lie, at this point, it felt like me learning how to drive kind of became the secondary goal behind doing whatever he needed to do at his house. So we finally pull up to his neighborhood after all these turns, and it's gated. So if Mike tries to pull anything and I gotta make a run for it, I'm gonna have to jump a fence on the way out. But we drive through the gates, we pull up to his house, and this man's house was big. Like, it was a nice house in a nice neighborhood. He opens the garage door and he said, pull into the garage. So I pull in, and I'm planning on just sitting in the car in the garage and just waiting for him to go in and come out. But then he's like, just come inside so you don't have to wait in the car. And I'm like, this is questionable. I mean, I had never met this dude before. Who knows what he had planned? But I mean, I was still like 90% sure that it was probably gonna be fine. So he's like, just come inside so you don't have to wait. And I'm like, all right. So I get out, we walk through the garage door leading into the house. And the first thing I see when I step into his house is one of those taxidermy things on the wall, but it was just the antlers. And then to the left of that, there was this giant gray animal skin. He's like, ah, yes, this is my elephant skin. I'm like, ah, relatable. And this thing was huge, like way bigger than I was. It stretched up and down most of his entire wall. And then there was also this weird picture of like some animal getting hunted, just not your typical everyday wall decorations, right? So I'm looking at this wall and I was about to ask him like, is there any chance that the meat you came here to flip, you hunted and killed yourself? Because this man just had dead animal parts just chilling on his wall. But anyways, he's like, follow me this way. So we're walking through his hallway of this huge house, big TVs on the wall everywhere. Neither of us are talking, it's dead quiet. And at this point, I'm making a mental map in my head of all the possible escape routes in case Mike tries to pull a fast one on me or something. And you gotta understand why I'm a little distrustful of this situation. Stopping off at some random house I've never been to with some dude I've never met before was not in my plans for that day. Apparently, his stakes were that important though. I mean, this dude was sketching me out. But we finally walk all the way through his house into the kitchen, and to my relief, he actually started doing some stuff with a pan that was in the oven, and I'm still keeping an eye on him, but I'm finally starting to relax a little bit. Like, the meat needing to be flipped wasn't just some made up cover story. There was actual steak that he was actually flipping. So I'm not as much on edge anymore. So he finishes his cooking thing, flipping his meat, we walk back through the hallway, get back in the car, and then continue driving around. Now, even though he didn't try to trap me in his house and kidnap me or anything, what a weird and random thing for you to interrupt your driving lesson for. I mean, hey, I hope his steaks turned out right, but I'm pretty sure that the people who employed him would not be too happy if they found out in the middle of the driving lesson he was just taking people into his house to show them his animal skins and do some quick cooking. But in any case, Mike ended up being a pretty chill guy. I drove with him a couple more times after that as well. There were no more stops off at his house, so that was a one-time thing. I just continued to learn more about his family and his cooking and whatever else he decided to ramble on about while I'm trying to drive. Mike, if you're watching this, you had me freaked out there for a second. Maybe don't go doing that to any of your future students. Hey, what's up guys? I hope you enjoyed today's animation. If you did, leave a like button or I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Hit the like button. There we go. But at the end of the next animation, I was thinking about doing like a little mini Q&A at the end of it. So if you got any questions about whatever, anything in general, just leave a comment down below, or you can DM me on Instagram too. So I'll be checking those DMs out. And yeah, thank you guys so much for the great year. We almost hit 250,000 subscribers, which is actually crazy. Almost 25% of the way there to that big million. But yeah, I really appreciate all the support as of late, and I will see you guys in the next one.